while we're on the topic of cars, forgive me, I don't remember the exact location, but the Aston Martin sequence, I assume Italy or France, but the big car sequence, which eventually involved the revolving 360 machine gun, shoot 'em up, everything scene. What was that experience like in terms of just going through it, both from the perspective of filming it all, but also, I guess, from the visual effects perspective? Like, what were the additional tasks that kind of tapped onto that?
The whole process of a car chase is fairly lengthy. You know, first of all, you've got to agree on what the car is, where you're going to film it, what it's roughly going to do. So, you know, fairly early on, there was a lot of interest in using the classic DB5. You know, not just in a cameo role and disappearing the sunset, but as a full-on action sequence. So, once that decision was made, it was a trip along to Aston Martin and say, look, you know, we've been there many times, but, you know, what car are you thinking about using? Normally they take you down into their concept room and show you all the cars that are coming out in a year's time. So we sort of shortcutted that by saying, well, we want the DB5. So, you know, that posed a slightly different problem for them from the usual sort of Bond caper. So, you know, we had to talk about, well, you know, how many do you think you need? Well, I said 10. So what do? Do we buy 10? They're probably not available, but they're probably a couple of million each. So that was an expensive way to go. Do we rent 10? Well, I don't think you would get people loaning their car out to a Bond film doing an action sequence. So the decision was made that Aston Martin would get us 2 original DB5s for James Bond, pulling up, pulling away, getting in, getting out of the car. And then Aston Martin made 8 other cars from scratch, really. 2 with pods on top, 2 were kitted out with all the gadgets, and there were another 4 for full-on stunt sequences and anything else they dreamt up. You know, it was forever evolving, and at one stage Bond was pushing one off of a cliff. At another stage, it was, you know, it went through various stages. And then, you know, the next thing is, okay, we've got the cars. Where's the location? Well, I don't know who came up with Matera, but it was inspirational as far as a location to do a car chase. You know, it dates back thousands and thousands of years. So this mixture of a modern car chase in amongst this setting was quite inspired. And then the gadgets, you know, there was a lot of talk. Do we stick with the original gadgets that was in the Goldfinger car? If you remember, it got blown up in Skyfall. And then Inspector was in Q's workshop being repaired. So I think we felt, and Carrie felt, that it possibly could have had a few upgrades. So we went from the small single barrel Browning gun out the little side light to the full-on minigun coming out the main headlight. We swapped out the tyre spikes for little bomblets, but kept the traditional smoke screen. Lee Morris and I went out to Matera, I think it was 13 times in all, finding locations, reporting back to Carrie what we could do, where we could do it, you know, until finally it was signed off what we were going to do, where we were going to do it, and then the whole circus moved out there.
That's great. Ali, what was your experience in terms of, let's say, a sequence like that? Like, what additional challenges kind of more fall into the post-production phase? Yeah,
I mean, we are really fortunate to be sort of building on so much that was done in camera. But inevitably, you know, there are moments when, you know, once you get into the editorial, you need to tweak some things. The pods needed painting out. We put some digidoubles nearby in jeopardy, jumping out the way. A little moped rider that gets nearly swiped as Bond's coming up towards him. The bomblets that come out the back, we added some of those as we're going around the corner before we nearly run into some sheep. The chase cars that we had in the plates needed to come further forward, so the sequence was shortened slightly, so we needed to bring them forward. So we added CG cars plates, to clean plates, to put into rear views. And then as the chase cars come closer, Chris had air rams underneath one of the chase cars that pushed it up, and some explosions that went off, from which we added some extra bits too. And then an oncoming agent's car, we needed to bring it closer and really take it out, blow it up. So we had to add that as well, just to really seal off his escape route up that road, and then obviously see the effect of the bomblets on this oncoming agent's car. But yeah, we're obviously, like a lot of the sequence, we're building on what was achieved in camera. When we get to Donut Square, a lot of throughout the sequence, obviously you do a few takes on those smooth limestone streets. You lay down a lot of rubber, so there's a lot of cleaning up to do of all the rubber that had been laid down from previous takes. And then for the smoke at the end, again, just once you get into editorial, we needed to tweak the smoke a little bit, so we added a bit more just to give it more of a donut, building on what Chris had already done. And then bullet hits on the windows. Again, it was a combination of Chris and myself. Chris was firing real not Zerk hits. What were they, Chris? The little ball bearings.
Esmonite pellets, that shatter.
Pellets so creating hits on the glass. And then once Primo comes up and starts really hammering that Madeline's window, we were adding more of a concentrated cluster next to her as he tries to, make a weak spot and force his way through the bulletproof glass. So, combination of the two of us, really.
Turned out amazing. Yeah, I love that sequence in particular. It really stood out. Again, all the sequences are quite memorable.
One thing that the production had to be particularly mindful of was that this town was literally thousands of years old. So the art department, the construction crew, wherever there was a corner where there was a potential for a car to spin out, the donut square, they would always put like concrete blocks down and blend them in to look like the houses. And the donut square, from 4 foot down was all our stuff, and then from 4 foot up was 1,000 years old. It was, the Bond have a reputation for going around the world and leaving it as they went in, and they certainly succeeded in Matera. And the people of Matera really opened their arms to us and made it possible, because there's only one real road through Matera, and we shut it sporadically down for about 5 weeks on the trot. So all credit to the townsfolk of Matera. They made it a wonderful sequence for us.